President Trump says Israel should cancel the ceasefire deal and let all hell break out in Gaza if the remaining hostages aren't released by midday on Saturday. It comes after Hamas announced a delay to releasing the next group of Israeli hostages until further notice, accusing Israel of breaking the ceasefire agreement. Hamas took 251 hostages when it attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023. 73 of those hostages are still being held in Gaza. Since the ceasefire began in January, 16 Israeli hostages have been released. By the end of the first stage of the ceasefire in 3 weeks' time, 33 hostages are expected to have been freed. Israel says 8 of those 33 are dead. Let's just show you these live pictures from Gaza, where Hamas accuses Israel of delaying the return of displaced Palestinians to the north of the Strip, firing on people and failing to allow in agreed humanitarian aid. These images that we've just seen a short time ago do see aid being brought into the territory. Well, Hamas officials say Donald Trump has further complicated the Gaza truce. Here's President Trump speaking to reporters in the Oval Office.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday. And if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock. And after that, I would say all hell is going to break out. And I don't think they're going to do it. I think a lot of them are dead. I think a lot of the hostages are dead. I think it's a great human tragedy what's happened, how people can be that mean to do. I'm speaking for myself. Israel can override it. But from myself, Saturday at 12 o'clock, and if they're not here, all hell is going to break out.
Well, a short time ago, we've had some comments in reaction from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who said we must avoid at all costs the resumption of hostilities in Gaza that would lead to an immediate tragedy. So we've just had that reaction in from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, urging Hamas to continue with the planned release of hostages. This comes after the Palestinian militant group announced its intention to halt the exchange. Let's get the latest with our Middle East correspondent, Ylande Nell, who is in Jerusalem. Ylande, welcome to you. Some developments over the past few hours of reaction there from the UN and also Hamas reacting to Donald Trump's comments. Bring us up to date.
So what we're expecting imminently is a meeting of the Israeli Security Cabinet to discuss their next moves. This was already scheduled, but of course the announcement yesterday by Hamas that it was going to hold up the next stage of the ceasefire deal, the next scheduled release of hostages on Saturday, accusing Israel of a number of violations of the ceasefire, which it denies. That has put these discussions by the Israeli Security Cabinet in a new light. We have families of the remaining Israeli hostages, some of them with supporters at a protest close to where that meeting is taking place. And really, this has heightened, of course, their anxiety about what should happen next, with President Trump's latest comments also just appearing to raise the stakes even more. I mean, the latest comments that we have had from Hamas really suggesting that there is room for mediators to step in the coming days in order to get the ceasefire as it's negotiated at the moment back on track. And that's a statement that was put out this morning by Hamas. And also we've had other comments from them, just suggesting that there is something strategically going on here as well. Because, of course, President Trump's surprise announcement last week of a US takeover of Gaza in the future, when he's doubled down in recent days on his suggestions that Palestinians should be forced to leave the Gaza Strip, that is its 2 million residents, in order to develop it as a sort of international travel destination. Hamas has said there is an agreement that must be respected by both parties. This is the only way to bring back what it's calling prisoners. Of course, it means Israel's hostages still in captivity.
Ylande, this ceasefire was described as fragile from the very start, but it has proved almost smooth, hasn't it, over the past 3 weeks, with the odd hiccup. What's your sense of where we're at now with this ceasefire deal?
I mean, look, it has looked fragile since the beginning when it was first implemented on the 19th of January. Now it does look increasingly wobbly. Of course, one of the real concerns of many Israelis, and there is, according to opinion polls, a desire among the Israeli public to push forward with the second stage of the ceasefire to bring home remaining hostages in return for a more permanent end to fighting in Gaza. But there has been a concern that the Israeli Prime Minister, particularly since embracing President Trump's plan for Gaza, for the future of Gaza, has wanted to keep open the door for a return to fighting. And we've got the Israeli military. They have been put on an increased state of alert. There's been leave postponed for combat soldiers in case of a return to the war in Gaza. I mean, as the UN Secretary General was saying, this would be devastating. Certainly Palestinians who have been commenting on this say there's already so much uncertainty about their lives. They're going back in many cases to the rubble of homes, humanitarian conditions extremely difficult, particularly given the stormy, wintry weather that we've had in the past week. And people are saying that already it seems to be hell in Gaza.
OK, Yolanda, for now, thank you. Well, President Trump has also warned he might withhold aid from Jordan and Egypt if they refuse to take in Palestinians as part of his plan to move them out of Gaza. Later today, Jordan's King Abdullah will visit the White House for his first meeting since Mr Trump's re-election. 𝗰cie Williamson has more now from the Jordanian capital Amman on what challenges are now posed by the new man in the White House.
A small country surrounded by conflicts, saturated with refugees. Jordan is a superpower of stability in a volatile region, now facing a conflict of its own with its US ally. Thousands protested here last week against Donald Trump's demand that Gaza's population relocate to Jordan. A plan seen as helping Israel's far-right nationalists take over Palestinian land. Jordan is already home to more than 2 million Palestinian refugees. The families in this camp came from Gaza, seeking temporary shelter after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. Generations later, they're still here. 𝗯🂂🀀🗶𝗫𝗄 Azazi left Jabalia in northern Gaza when he was a toddler. He says Gazans have learned the lessons of previous generations and will refuse to leave, including his own family, now digging through the rubble of their house for the bodies of 18 relatives.
Donald Trump's mentality is from the Middle Ages, or the days of the Native Americans and how they got rid of them. He deals with things like a real estate broker, and he's an arrogant narcissist. That's not how things are done.
Jordan's government is treading a tightrope between its political ties to Israel and the US and its people's ties to the Palestinians. The Gaza war strained existing fault lines here. Donald Trump's vision of the peace is pushing them to breaking point. High unemployment here has left native Jordanians queuing at food banks, adamant they can't take in any more refugees.
We can't find job. We can't find any money. All these employees without job.
So what happens if more refugees come to Jordan, if Gazans come to Jordan?
We will die. We will die.
But Jordan is also under pressure from its key military ally. Donald Trump has suspended US aid worth more than $1.5 billion a year. A former Jordanian foreign minister, now in Washington, said that won't work.
The choice is clear. Jordan cannot take any number of Palestinian refugees, no matter what the stakes are. So if the price is economic sanctions, that is a very small price to pay if you consider the existential threat that is posed to Jordan.
But risks for Amman mean risks for its allies too. Jordan is host to US military forces and millions of refugees. If stability is Jordan's superpower, the threat of unrest is its biggest weapon and its best defence. 𝗰cie Williamson, BBC News.